Hi, everyone. So today I want to go ahead and talk a little bit about our narrative argument assignment. This is going to be our first paper in the class, and it's a pretty short paper. It's only 3 pages, and you don't need to have sources, but it's still helpful to get a head start on it. So I want to cover it as early as possible. And partly that's just because I want you to have enough time to come up with a good idea that you feel excited about or confident about, or, it seems like a lot of you are working ahead. So if you're eager to get started, I want to make sure that I give you that opportunity. So let's talk about this. Basically, our narrative argument assignment is asking you to think of a moment in your life when you kind of changed your mind about something. Okay, maybe you had a realization of some sort, or maybe it's just some sort of moment in your mind that just really stands out as memorable. Um, and we're going to read lots of sample essays for this, like lots of writers have talked about this, have written about this. For those of you who already watched the Adichie video, you've already seen somebody take the stories from their own life and make them into an argument about something. In her case, this idea of the single story or, stereotypes, right? And so you want to think about what are some things that have happened in your life that really stand out, that made an impression on you, that you feel like maybe changed your mind about something, made you who you are. It doesn't have to be like a huge thing. If you think about Adichie's video, she is telling you so many different stories in that video, right? You don't have to even come up with just one big story. You could think of something like, what is something that's important to me? And then how did that happen? Like, why did that end up becoming such an important thing for me? And sometimes it's lots of little things that happen that add up to having a realization. And sometimes it's one big moment. And so you might want to just think about which one it might fit into. Some people really do better when they think about the moments in their lives, these kinds of stories, and they start there. Other people do better when they think about themes, like what is something that's important to me? And so you might just want to give yourself the opportunity to think from both directions, like what are some moments that are standing out to me as important? And then what are some themes that are really important to me in my life? What do I believe in? What do I want to share with others? So when I talk about this being an argument, sometimes that makes people a little bit wary. And that's because when we're talking about our own lives, it's so personal, right? And so it can feel a little bit strange to then say, well, I'm making an argument to you. I think you should do something different or you should think differently. But for the sake of this assignment, we're not thinking of arguments being like kind of direct and you're not trying to persuade someone to change necessarily in a major way. Really, the goal here is to share perspectives. And so now, if they're going to be changing, it might even be something as small as they're changing the way that they think about something, or they have a little bit more information about how other people see the world. So that's just a little bit of background. In terms of looking at the assignment, for our peer review, that's going to be due on the 16th of September, and we're just going to do that online on Google Docs. And so I'll have you get into little groups and read each other's essays. You only have to have 2 pages written by that point. By the end of the week, you will be submitting the full essay. So just make sure that you're at least at 2 pages at that point. And it's okay if you go over, by the way. If you have more than 3 pages, that's okay. It's just you want to have at least 3 pages all the way down to that little bottom line. And that is double spaced, by the way. If you want to scroll down to the bottom of the assignment description, there's also a rubric down here that's going to tell you exactly how I'm going to grade your paper. I'm going to be looking for things like, do you have a lot of description? You're going to hear me say this a lot, talk about this a lot. So here's time number one. You just want to make sure that you don't have to be super flowery. You don't have to go on and on, but you want to make sure that you're giving us enough information, enough detail that we can imagine your experience, right? Maybe we can picture it. We can kind of hear what the noises were like in the room when it was happening or whatever. Okay, so you just want to make sure we have enough detail that we can imagine it. You also want to make sure you have an argument, right? And so again, an argument doesn't necessarily have to mean something like you should do this, but it will need to be something that is a clear theme that we're picking up. Like, I kind of get the meaning. I'm getting an idea of this, the point that you're trying to make. Or maybe you do say something directly like, here's what I learned from this experience, right? But it needs to be there. Organization, stories can be deceptively simple. It might feel very easy to begin a story at the beginning and then end at the end. But I want to encourage you to think a little bit about what are the moments that were leading up to this moment, what happened afterward, really challenge yourself to think about, okay, where does the story really start and where does it really end? And I typically, when I write, because I write a lot of fiction and some memoir stuff. So when I'm writing, I typically start as early as possible as I can. And then I do end up having to cut some because I want to start at the most exciting place in the story or a place that I think the reader is going to get interested. But that's up to you. Basically, you just want to make sure that you're helping the reader follow the story. And honestly, if you have other people read your story, they'll probably be able to tell you, oh, I got lost here, or what happened? I feel like I'm missing something. Audience awareness, this is going to be stuff like we have these personal experiences and personal knowledge. And sometimes when we're telling stories, we forget to kind of give people the information that they need to figure out what we're talking about. So, for example, like I study comic books. Recently, I presented at San Diego Comic Con, and I was sharing my research with people in my family and stuff, and they saw the word floppies and they were like, what the heck is this? And that's because that's a term that people in comics, the comics industry use or comics fans use, but not like everyone knows what that is, right? And so it's important when you have things like that, that you're giving the reader enough information that they can kind of figure it out. Sometimes it's good to avoid language that people don't know what it means, but sometimes it's important to use the right word and then just kind of help the reader figure it out with you. All right, revision and editing. This is the last thing. When you think of English, you might be thinking of grammar, spelling, formatting, and all of that stuff is important and we will cover it. But for our papers, just keep in mind that spelling and grammar is going to be a lower priority. It's much more important to make sure that you're communicating ideas. For this paper, you can be creative, you can be reflective. Those are going to be more important. Getting your message across to your reader, that's more important than if you forget a comma. Okay, so everything related to revision and editing, including MLA formatting, pardon me, is going to be worth 1 point out of 15. Yeah, so don't focus too much on that. You want to make sure that you're focusing on these things at the top. All right, so I'm going to keep this video short. I hope this was helpful, and please let me know if you have any questions.